to this introductory webinar talking about the Open IT project and the Open IT body of knowledge, if we can call it that. That's a bit of a grand title, but the purpose of this exercise is to build a set of content and ideas by the end of this year that we can then I can then turn into a book next year, I hope. So I'll share the content through the course of this year and evolve it in the interactions with this community and hopefully have something that can be turned into something interesting next year. I'm quite grandly calling it How to Do IT in the 21st Century. But we can discuss how appropriate a label that is later. So we are Teal Unicorn. I'll introduce we in just a moment. And we work mostly in New Zealand and Vietnam, but all over the world where we can. And we do consulting in ways of working, and we do training, coaching, and content around the same things. So Teal Unicorn is Dr. Cherry Vu, who isn't here tonight, but she'll turn up in some of these things, who knows nothing about IT and is a business person and an academic with a doctorate in public policy. And there's myself, who's an IT guy from way back. I used to do all the tech once, and now I know absolutely none of it. I had some notoriety as the IT Skeptic, a blog that retired a little while ago. And Cherry and I are, of course, partners in life and work. So we get pretty spectacular results. This is a selection of some of the results we get working with our clients to advance them into better ways of working. All of our clients are successful. Our clients are kind of self-selecting in that they want to work with us. So that makes it a little bit easier to get these kind of results. But if you look at these are not 10% improvements, right? These are organizations who are spectacularly exceeding their prior performance by working and managing in better ways. And they're across the board. So they're a wide assortment of organizations. There's lots of enterprise, large manufacturers, large logistics and distribution companies, large finance, and then medium-sized manufacturers, medium-sized retailers, and small business as well, small retailers and real estate and that kind of thing. So across the range of industries, across the range of sizes, we get really amazing results with this stuff. And in a specifically IT context, then during the course of the year, we'll talk about some of the examples, but, you know, Cherry's very proud of a couple of clients, getting them to create a whole new digital product in a day and using open collaborative techniques, design, plan, and implement a whole new product on their IT systems. Done that a couple of times now. And I'll talk about one of my favorite clients as well, and how we slash their defect rates in IT by working in new ways by a factor of hundreds of defects going into production per month. Mostly we work at the business level, but, you know, as these two slides suggest, we also work within IT as well, or as part of that, and get some really interesting results. The ideas that we present for the rest of the year all hinge around this word open. And we started using the word open because we felt like the word agile was overused. Not capital A agile for software, but small a agile for you know, business agility. Everyone's using the word, but they're using it as a broader and broader umbrella term for a lot of stuff that's more than that word means. Whereas the word open is a great word that embraces all the aspects, all the possible implications of what we're talking about. So we've stopped talking about agile. We wrote that book, The Agile Manager, small a. I now heavily regret having fallen into the temptation of putting the word agile in a book title. At the time, we were even toying with using the word open, and we went, no one knows what that means. We'll say agile. And I wish now we'd been stronger about using the word open, even back, it's like 4 years ago now, I think we wrote that book, that we were already starting to use the word open back there, and we should have been tougher about it. But now, absolutely, we use the word open in preference to agile, unless we're specifically referring to the behavior of agility. And open's a great word. Like it comes up everywhere. We're not inventing a new word here. We're using a word that we see coming up in all sorts of contexts. These are all phrases that I've seen or that people use, right? They're all out there. And some of them are IT specific, like open source, and some of them are business or work specific, and some are just more general phrases. But when I say the word open, it potentially invokes all these kind of thoughts, right? So we're big on the word open, and that underpins everything. And then we have our brand, Teal Unicorn. The word teal plays into all of this as a code for culture. It comes from Lalou and his book, Reinventing Organization. Teal is the highest form of culture that Lalou believes has been observed in the wild in organizations. It's somewhere between green culture and blue culture. And it's become a buzzword that's used widely as a code for high culture. And then unicorn is a buzzword that's used widely in the IT world for high performing organizations, for high operating model, for organizations that do stuff that's indistinguishable from magic, right? So Teal Unicorn as our brand is lifted from these two terms to say you've got the high culture and the high capability. And our slogan is make work better. And so this is what it's all about when we talk about these better ways of working. It's about better results for the organization. So you just saw that slide with all the amazing numbers on it. Better lives for the people doing the work. So that's not visible in those numbers, but that's actually the bigger motivator for us, is to just make life better for people at work. And better society, that by elevating culture and by pushing higher ethical values in business, we believe we're contributing to a better society as well around the organizations we're working with. So with that background, we can say that we're talking about open work. And there will be a book called Open Work. It's gestating like an elephant, but there is a book on its way to kind of replace the Agile Manager as a book for this umbrella concept of agile work. So when we say agile work, we're invoking all of these mental images or all of these concepts that you can see here. You can talk about open as letting the light and air in, and making it a better feeling place, the climate, the zeitgeist of the place. Making room, open as in creating slack, creating headroom, liberating, giving people room to perform. Open as in exposing the workings, open as in transparency, as in being able to look in and reveal what's going on in the organization. Open as in inclusion and diversity, inviting people in, creating a welcoming organization. Open to the future, open as in creating possibilities and allowing innovation and diversification and advance. Open as in connectivity and networking and allowing pollination, open between silos within the organization, open to entities outside the organization, and allowing networking, cross-fertilization, open as in letting the value out and allowing the organization to create. And so generally just open as in letting us thrive. So that, I think it's a dynamite word to wrap up all of the ideas that are out there about better ways of working and managing. And almost none of it is, I would say, invented by Teal Unicorn. It's just us learning from what's going on in the world and has been going on in the world. Some of it has been going on for a century. Some of it's been going on for decades. Some of it is a lot newer too, but the ideas that are influencing how we work are what we study and what we use and what we prove and shake down with our clients. One way that we have been using for quite a while to summarize all of that is human systems adaptability. So all of the underpinning ideas to this, we think can be grouped up as human systems adaptability. So there's all the humanistic stuff around allowing people to be their whole selves and creating a psychologically safe environment and generally letting people flourish at work. Moving away from command and control to servant gardener kind of management culture. All these ideas, I'd sum it up as just saying that we try to encourage organizations to be nice. I think you could put it all into a single word: niceness, or perhaps trust is one that people bring up all the time. But the human aspects of new ways of working, and then the systems aspects. And yes, there's flow and lean and things like that in there, but more so, I think, at a systems level, the better ways of working these days are understanding complexity and holistic systems and networks, and understanding that it's much, much more than a simple linear system, understanding the implications of the fact that we live in a VUCA complex world when we talk about systems. And then finally, the necessity of living in that kind of world means there's a whole lot of stuff around adaptability, around organizations' ability to survive and thrive in the 21st century. And one of the things we talk about is that lovely old phrase that what got you here won't get you there. That all of the patterns of 20th century management that evolved in a much more peaceful and stable time are ceasing to be as effective in the 21st century. And, you know, most organizations are becoming aware of the necessity to change. With the rapid acceleration of technology, with the rapid shifts in social values and the demands that puts on organizations, and must also mention the political instability that we're moving into as well, are all factors that mean that a lot of the assumptions and simplifications that worked in the past don't work anymore. And so organizations must be able to constantly adapt to constant challenge and constant change. We've used that phrase for a number of years now. Human systems adaptability is another way of summing up what we now call open work. It occurred to me that as an IT guy, that we're doing all this great stuff and we're writing all this cool stuff about what we're learning. And it occurred to me that I really ought to close the circle and bring this back to IT and contextualize it for IT. So that's what we're doing this year, is we're learning and synthesizing and pondering to say, well, what does open work mean specifically in an IT context? And that's what we will work on for the rest of the year is to grow that. So we're calling it Open IT, and this is the logo for it, which I think is pretty cool, for Open IT. And at the moment, I'm summarizing it with 3 words again, which is adaptability, liberation, and flow. So all the ideas that I've gathered and extracted appear to fall into 3 groupings again. Ideas around adaptability of IT, again, that ability to respond. Adaptability is made up of 2 key pieces. It's made up of agility and resilience. And so for IT to be adaptable, for it to be able to constantly shift and change and adjust, it needs resilience to cope with the stresses and shocks of that. And it needs agility to exploit, to capitalize on change and take advantage of it and track it. The second one is the human stuff again, is the liberation of people within IT. Dan Mezek talks about giving people the authority to do their job, which is actually a huge problem in conventional IT, as people are actually unable to function. So liberating people to be able to get work done, liberating value, freeing up the value to actually be able to get out of the IT organization. And finally, flow, because I just finished poo-pooing linear flow a moment ago, but those simplifications of treating the world as a simple linear pipe don't always fail. They're just less and less applicable with the changing world. And they still work fine when you have tightly bounded, well-behaved systems. When you've put bounding constraints in place to force the system to be well-behaved and linear. And of course, the IT value stream from development to production is an example of an area where we generally manage to constrain it into being a well-behaved flow. And so the good old lean ideas of flow still work pretty well within IT for where we're flowing value into production. We still need to also think about more complex systems. We still need to think about network value, co-creation, but there are plenty of times in IT when we can just think about good old-fashioned flow as well. So all of that, there's another heading there for actually getting work done and the ability to deploy better and faster. So those are the key headings so far. As I said, this will evolve through the year in discussion in this community, and just saying it out loud sometimes shapes it, right? I don't know about you, but I certainly think when I'm talking. So just the very act of sharing this will evolve my thinking, and then the feedback and the reflection from sharing it with this community and getting other people's thoughts and perspectives will shape it as well. And so by the end of the year, it might not look exactly like this, who knows? In fact, I hope it doesn't. I hope by the end of the year, we've kicked it around quite a bit and there'll be something different. That's Open IT. So that Open IT project is the piece of work for the rest of the year to evolve this. And so I will do a LinkedIn post roughly every week, and possibly, and some of those will also be a webinar like this, and occasionally there'll be a video or something as well. But every week there'll be a LinkedIn post. Then I'll encourage discussion on LinkedIn in the comments on that post around that week's topic. So we'll break it down every week. We'll have a different topic through the rest of the year to explore the whole space and have discussion on that to try and shape it. And there will be an email, as I said, every week that links to the LinkedIn post and shares the content of the LinkedIn post as well, and has other content available only to those who are receiving the email. It'll have a summary of the previous week's discussions, be summarized in there, only to those receiving the email. And some supplementary study resources for those who want to delve into what we're talking about that week. There'll be additional stuff for people to think about and read. And there'll be news on what's going on with the Open IT project and Open IT, and you know, news about upcoming events like future webinars and so on. So anyone can read the LinkedIn posts and the comments there, but to really be part of the journey, you've got to be getting these weekly emails, because they will be the core thing that ties us all together and provides the full value to each person of what's available. And then next year, a book. So that's the plan. Well, already executing on the plan. We've had a couple of emails already. And I don't know if you've looked, but there is a page for the Open IT project. And on there is a schedule for what we're going to talk about for the rest of the year. So I've already sketched the schedule for the whole year of what we'll talk about each week. There's a syllabus on there, which is all the headings we're going to touch, which is one lens of viewing it. But there's also a schedule, which is a different lens, because through these topics here, we'll touch all of the stuff in the syllabus, all of the theoretical concepts, but we're not going to just have one theoretical concept each week. We're going to actually talk about something a bit more narrative, or a bit more real world each week, that touches on a number of these topics. So that's the schedule for the year, you see. So I put a lot of thought into this, but this will evolve as well. So as we work our way through this, I may well adjust with, you know, from feedback and discussion with this community, adjust what's coming up for the rest of the year. We might realize that some of these collapse together. We might discover a whole lot of other things we want to add in, or to replace these. So this could well evolve through the year as well. But at the moment, this is what I'm planning to talk about every week. And so there's 33, I think, in total there. We'll still come close to being done by about New Year, one of these each week. For those of you who have subscribed recently and joined up, you know, welcome to the Teal Tribe, is what we call our community of colleagues and clients and followers and collaborators and everyone who kind of revolves around Teal Unicorn. And I'm hoping this will be a community thing for the rest of the year, to shake these ideas down into something that will be really useful for the IT community. And that's Open IT.
I just looked at my Open IT deck from 9 years ago. I started to think about the term called Open Enterprise, which is pretty much the open work part that you had about 10 years ago. And then I started to evolve that into IT. And since I never built it totally out, because it was too early, frankly. People weren't thinking about that. And most recently, I've started to work with a colleague, a business partner here. I invited Andre Shenton in the call. We're currently building a firm called Thrive 8. You use the word thrive at the bottom of your open work slide, which basically what we want to do, we want to bring old terms, digitalization and agile ways of working, or ways of working and technology closer together rather than supporting each other.
So do you think that'll play well into this?
Absolutely. No, yeah. Absolutely. You're totally spot on.
To sharing.
And we need to, I have a lot of stuff to contribute. I'm really looking forward to collaborating with you on that one. Absolutely.
That'll be great. Be really good. I mean, I'm sure a number of us are thinking about this stuff. And that's one of the exciting aspects is that ability to draw on that. I look forward to that. And it's nice that you were using the word open. I feel good. It was
before I totally caught up on the term agile. I shifted then to use the word agile, and I'm seeing the pains that you described, that the word is burned, not wrong, right? But people associate negative things with it, right? Which happens unfortunately very too often. And people are turning away from it, but it doesn't change that the concepts behind it are right, and in addition, more urgent than ever, right?
Every,
And we
every
need to
time,
get this fixed.
yeah, every time it comes up, every time open comes up, it makes me feel good that it was the right choice of word, because others fall there as well on that. Yeah, and certainly there's a like you say a level of urgency around getting this done.
Yeah, I sort of have an idea of which is an idiot idea of opening up France, because France is a country, lovely country, etc. I love working there. I love living there. I couldn't work in a French organization because they're too tight, real old-fashioned manager that commands, and employees that try not to do too much what the manager is saying, and especially no initiative from people in working in French organizations.
I'll be trying hard to do the same in New Zealand, so I don't think the French have an exclusive hold on tightly closed organizations. I can assure you that. Some of the ones I've worked with here in New Zealand need a good, because there's a scatological analogy here as well, opening up. Some organizations are severely constipated. So there's yet another aspect to opening up that you can explore there. Yeah.
And another thing, I'm part of another community, which is about unified service management, created by Jan van Bon in the Netherlands, which is actually trying to decomplex the whole ITIL stuff into something methodically and simple. So I'm in my head trying to see how I could join these two community ideas to make it work.
Again, anything that sort of throws another lens on this is always will be very welcome. And so each of the minds I can see arrayed in front of me here. I was commenting before we started recording, we all look remarkably similar. I'm hoping there'll be a bit more diversity in the group going forward, but all these different minds bringing these different lenses, like, you know, the stuff that Thomas is talking about, and you, Peter, and I know everyone else has different perspectives on this. They'll all illuminate in different ways. I hope.
I'm thinking about the story that you and Sherry obviously have delivered. Yes, the management, the owners, whatever, can understand profit, understand the benefits of working and the value of that. Your average worker, and they're with them, they're what's in it for me. How do you get that message across to them? Because that's where the culture has to change.
That's the easy bit. Honestly, that's the easy bit. So having worked in ITIL and ITSM for years, that's a hard sell, right? Trying to get people to adopt more formal process and, you know, ways of working that have been defined for them and they're being told what to do is really hard. But when we come into an organization and say, let's talk about what you think would make work better, and let's help you design your better new ways of working, and here's your boss with us, come to empower that and just listen and stop telling you what to do. It's a doddle. It's an absolute doddle. If you let people work in better ways, they love to. They're delighted. They cry. We have people cry. We have people.
I think that comes, back to that they're wanting to work with you, because the governments and the large multinationals I've had, it's like, no, I'm just tell me what I've got to do and I'll do it, but I'm not going to In fact, one person challenged me, said, I do not get paid to work, do not get paid to think. Just tell me what to do. And I said,
Yeah,
you do get paid to think.
Yeah, but that's honestly, that's because they're not psychologically safe, and because they're embittered, and we don't work much with the people. Well, we do, but our focus is with the management. And if we can change the culture and style and method of management, then inviting people to change how they work is a doddle. So it's a bell curve, right? And so you still have those bitter and twisted people right down the back end of the bell curve, and we just avoid them, So the results speak for themselves, right? That we get this extraordinary outburst of creativity and collaboration and improvement from the people doing the work. And the one thing I didn't talk about in that slide with all the numbers in it is that's measured, that's within a period of months, right? That it doesn't take us 3 years to get those sort of results. We start turning the performance of an organization around within a week sometimes. And usually within 3 to 6 months, we get wild improvements in performance from the people doing the work. We just, and it's because we unlock them. It's all within them. The change is all within the people. We're not coming in with answers. We're not designing anything. We're not telling anybody how they should work at all. In fact, we spend a lot of time saying, can you please stop asking us what the answer is? Because we don't know your business. That's not what we're here for. And we just unlock what's already there within the organization. And we get these incredible explosions of performance. But the first thing we've got to do is get the managers out of their way.
Yeah, well, sometimes workers are sort of formatted to do what they're told. Makes me think of this nice thing that you find on YouTube about the captain of the submarine.
It's your ship or turn the ship around. I always forget which is which.
No. It's the one who actually refuses to give orders.
Yeah. The book is called "Turn the Ship Around," I think.
Yeah.
David Marquette.
Yeah.
That's one of the many inspirations for us is that book.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this idea of just stop telling people what to do. It's just quite extraordinary the effect if you just ask people, hey, can we all just get together and improve the work? And so we've developed our own techniques to create collaborative workshops for that kind of thing. But also, when I say we don't work with them a lot, we've got a couple of specific interventions that we use to help them reshape the work, particularly around moving from skills, not roles, right? Breaking down the formal role structure and getting people to think in terms of working with the skills they have, not with the role they've been given, and create much more fluidity of work. And the other thing is like I said before, flow and value stream mapping and getting the waste and the crap out of the flow and accelerating flow. Every organization we work with has insane bureaucracy, and just ripping some of that out is an easy win. Once you've got the management to accept that. That's why I say the management are the key. But once we get management to accept that we are going to do that, then the doing is actually pretty quick. I won't say easy, but people, if you say to people, what crap can we get out of your work? They will actively and vocally come up with stuff to make their lives easier. It just flows out of them.
I really like the use of the word open when you introduced it 3 or 4 years ago, and it's been sitting in my mind as a substitute for the word agile. And I think it's been quite telling reading on LinkedIn now for the last couple of months and maybe even over a year and a half. reading about the how more and more people have become critical of agile or fake agile or flaccid agile, or there's many permutations of the failure, not necessarily of agile, but I think the entire ecosystem and how it is interpreted and the failures that have resulted from it. So I've been, for myself, I believe very much in the agile principles. I think it is very valid. Unfortunately, it's become wrapped up in something that by association, it's become associated with failure and all sorts of hubris. So I really do like the idea of using the word open, and I do think it probably is a more appropriate word than agile ever was. And I think that's maybe something that we challenged with in the IT industry is there's the mechanistic approach of doing work, but then there's also the ethos that we bring, and that falls under the banner of professionalism. And the two parts of doing the work, and I really like this. So yeah, other than gushing, I can't really add very much more.
Well, I'm not, and I should say that, yeah, I mean, agile is a great concept, and as I talked about, we it's a key part of adaptability is agility. So it's still in the mix. Absolutely, all the concepts of agile are in there, but the word gets abused. I think there's also something else at play, which is that any great idea, I always use the analogy of if you've got this beautiful idea that's like this beautiful clear, colorful, not clear, but this beautiful vivid, colorful ink, if you drip the ink into a big bucket of muddy water, the ink will spread out and dilute, and it'll slightly improve the bucket of water, but the bucket of water will also degrade the ink. And so it's a bit like that when someone comes up with a great idea like agile, you drop it into the world's commercial community, and it will get diluted and polluted and sullied, and it will end up looking like agile looks. I think that's just inevitable with any great new idea when it's commercial or humanity. I mean, humans will just drag it down and make it their own and dilute it, mess it up. So yeah, you can't really blame agile. The concepts are great. It's just an inevitable consequence of 20 years of being ground up by society, by commerce. But yeah, it's still in there. And you're right, the word has baggage. And I guess, the word open will probably have baggage in 20 years' time too, right? The same, it'll just be this cycle.
Oh, I'm waiting for the word leadership to get tainted.
Yeah, well, kind of, it's getting a little bit.
They all talk about it, but never get it right? But I think we also need to talk about the concept of digitalization in our discussion here, because I would first of all never say that IT isn't agile. They have mastered agile project management. That's where it came from, right? But they probably failed to use agile concepts to drive digitalization in the right directions. And we're seeing many digitalization efforts stalling and not working. And I think if I hear you talking about open IT, I think what we want to do, we want to really make sure that digitalization starts to contribute the benefits to society and the companies that the potential it has, right? It just somehow hasn't unlocked. And our, that is Andre and mine's idea about how can we unlock it is digitalization was done as a push exercise very often. We need to digitize this, right? And in order for this to happen, we need to create a pull. We need to give digitalization a purpose, a reason. So the question, where is that coming from? And that comes from open work. We need to work differently. So what IT capabilities do we need to have in order to support that new way of working? So by bringing working and IT capabilities and ways of working closer together and creating a pull on the digitalization part, we will accelerate everything in the organization. And that's what we have to unlock.
We would add one more thing to that. Teal Unicorn, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And stop doing it to people, right? Stop pushing. create a pool. Absolutely agree. We would add one more thing, because when I think about all the attempts at moving towards different ways of working that I've observed and been part of for many years, whether it's ITIL or agile or safe or digitization or anything, you know, whenever any great new way of working, they all fail, I believe, for a single common cause. And that is that organizations tried to change how they work without properly changing how they manage the work. So create the pool, absolutely, but even that pool will be locked unless we change how the managers manage to allow that pool the freedom to flow. So that's why we're so successful. That's absolutely why we're so successful with all our clients, is because we focus on unlocking the managers, changing how they manage to allow the work to move.
Yeah. And there's actually an interesting, I don't know whether you know Stephen Denning. He just came out with a book called Reinventing Capitalism in the Digital Age. And he has one very important message in there, because he looks at the old system, traditional hierarchical Tayloristic organizations that were run by whatever shareholder capitalism, right? And he paints the picture of a new organization. We would probably traditionally call it an agile organization, right? But he's also moving away from the term for the very similar reasons, like you do. And he compares the both and across multiple dimensions, and he says the reason why making this change from old ways of working, old organizations to new organizations, is that every system across culture, processes, values, focus, etc., is in itself consistent. So you have a consistent capitalistic traditional system, and you have a consistent model of new ways of working, and making that shift through all the dimensions, which changes basically everything, is so hard to do, and it will take years, probably 10 years. I mean, ING took 10 years to do the shift to agile, right? It'll probably take 10 years to make the journey, and it is so hard, and it touches on everything, and this is why it fails more often than not. Right? People are giving up, and particularly then you get that at all from the managers.
I mean, we get results within a couple of months.
Yes, when you are, and I think you need what you said something very important. Where you said you asked for permission. Do the people want it, right? And are the managers prepared to get out of the way and letting it happen? You know, Andre and I had the same consistent. We came together because we were so frustrated by organizations trying to do it, not really wanting it, not really having a business case to do it, and not having the stamina pulling it through. And said we were sick of working with organizations who label things and just do it for saying, oh, we are also agile, but they're not. It's all fake. Right? We want to work with people who really want it and make those organizations successful, so society successful, and then use this to prove the other ones that they either have to do it or they will be liberated.
Yeah, absolutely. Our clients
are so sick working with people who don't get it.
Yeah, totally. And I had the same feeling. I get a bit sick of banging me. I agree. And our clients now are self-selecting. We don't market, we don't sell.
Awesome.
They come to us, and occasionally we even filter a client out and go, we don't think you're ready to embark on this yet, which is why we're so successful, because the only ones we end up working with are the ones where the chief executive is willing and therefore will turn that first key for us, and where, well, actually that's the main thing. And then, you know, there's a certain level of open-mindedness. It's like we work with big
open-mindedness. Let's tag that.
Yeah, but we work with one of the biggest banks in Vietnam, right? And Vietnamese banks are not open-minded, to put it very, very mildly. And so we have patchy results there, that we only work with certain divisions where the boss of that division is supportive. And there are still people in other divisions who are the boss of the division who can see all the money being unlocked and see all the morale being unlocked. And they still go, I don't like it. That's not how you run a bank. And they'll literally walk away from money on the table because they still want to dig into their old fashioned. So you're right. It's a miserable exercise to even try to engage with them. So, yeah, I mean, we do have the leisure and luxury of working with people who actually want to change. That I'm open about that. But once you do, then it's really quick. It's really quick. And I think, I mean, I still agree with it. I sort of shouldn't have interrupted there, but I agree with Denning in the sense that it'll take decades for society as a whole to get its head around these things. Yeah, it took, as you say, it took at least 10 years for business to start paying attention to agile. So there is that social change. That's really slow. I was talking to someone about this yesterday, and you know, we make the joke that it's generational. Sometimes you have to wait for people to die.
Yes, I come to that realization myself, and that is quite sad. Because if there's something I believe in people, and that people can change. But often they don't want to, or they don't see the need to. And it's hard.
Cherry is a wonderful Zen personality, and she just doesn't let anything upset her. And so that frustration that you feel, that you so passionately communicate, you know, learning to just go, well, you can't help them all, and you know, we help where we can, and sometimes we just walk away. We just go, you know.
Yeah, it's like alcohol addiction. There's no cure for it. The person who's suffering from it needs to want to change.
Yeah,
it needs to come from the person. Then you can start working with them. But if they haven't realized the problem, you can try, but I wouldn't waste my time on it too much.
No, it's like depression. I'm a depression survivor, and until you want to climb out of the hole of depression, then no one can pull you up out of it. Yeah. That's not a very cheerful sort of way of looking at it, though. But we're passionate about this because we're getting such good results, and because I've had those miserable experiences that you refer to, working in organizations that are totally stony ground. There's people out there having success and espousing these ideas in so many different ways, and we'll touch on all of them through the rest of the year. And not just the ones I know about, but yeah, people will contribute and bring others in as well. And I think we'll put together a really interesting body of knowledge that can maybe make a bit of a difference for IT.
So, Rob, if I may just quickly touch on this just culture, I actually put it in there just as a just as a note. But one of my volunteer responsibilities is I'm the chairperson of an aviation organization here in South Africa. I've got about 2,000 odd pilots that belong to the association, whether they are local or foreign pilots. And we are trying to drive obviously safety is one of our really, really big issues. And I'm trying to drive this whole notion of just culture. And it is so difficult because of past iterations of and the way that just culture has been abused and misused in the past. And it's quite a challenge to shift culture and particularly using this. So what I've found is to not actually use the term just culture any longer, and just to go on the basis of openness. And
open is such a wonderful word that you can slap it on the front of anything and people immediately know what you know. If you say open safety, right, it just immediately, I think, invokes all the right things. Just about every context where we've just used it to explain what we're trying to do.
Yeah, this is an interesting aspect here. I think we need to look for examples of failure as well to learn from that. I mean, you know, the fuck up nights, right? As an idea, as such an idea, fuck up project. And I think we could also keep an eye on examples where closed IT didn't work, or an agile transformation on a larger scale in an organization didn't work. I think we may want to collect those case studies and derive learnings from that.
Oh yeah,
Because at the moment I'm listening to podcasts and stuff like that. At the moment, the stories about where it didn't work and why it didn't work are more than the ones where people saying it worked, and that's quite frustrating to see.
there's a
So
rich resource out there.
yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I can just add on to that is I started doing this years ago, collecting stories of places where things didn't work. And I think the challenge of that is then you get to the counter argument of, well, they didn't implement ITIL, or they didn't implement Agile, or they were actually, it was some hybrid bastardized version. And I think there's a bit of a challenge to that. So I think what would probably be more useful is going into the actual reasons for failure. Was it the lack of executive support? Was it the lack of delegation, or the lack of authority? Was it what was the actual root cause or contributing cause, as Rob always says? So it's I think the stories, you know, we can also see now with the whole SAFE. I think there's a whole website that's dedicated to all the SAFE failures. And you know equally the SAFE practitioners are arguing that, you know, the SAFE failures are because they haven't implemented it correctly. So and I think there's an underlying reason which is actually more valuable to uncover.
SAFE is a lovely example of what I was saying, that SAFE is done to people. Nobody ever volunteers and collaborates to introduce SAFE. It's done to them. It's announced that they're going to be safe, and the procedures are imposed on them, and it's done by force. They lubricate SAFE and they insert it up the organization, right? And then they wonder why it doesn't work, you know? It's one of the worst in that regard. So, yeah, sorry.
You forgot the squirting of Agile sauce part.
Yeah, so there is one community that carry the part of the spirit is the inner source community. And this is basically to apply the open source principle, but within an organization. So that means like you basically let the code from different teams to be completely open, and other teams can actually cooperate. And they have very similar guidelines and principle in place that I think it's very relevant to what we're discussing.
Interesting. Thank you. Yeah, that will be another one, another lens.
What I see here is, on one hand, open IT is a great idea because it gives the possibility to embrace all these great ideas we have in place right now. On the other hand, there's still the challenge to overcome, let's call it organizational inertia, because that's and what you say, if you say, well, you have to get the managers out of the way. It's exactly the point here. You need people with a modern mindset on the C level or in the C-suite in order to make it happen, and that's the biggest challenge I believe, to focus on this challenge, because the people in themselves, they already know what has to be done and how to change the organization. The frameworks and whatever kind of framework you take, out of my experience, is just more or less a guideline, and especially as this was mentioned several times, ITIL is not something that is very flexible. You can use it. You can create your own ITIL environment. That's not the point here. The point is to measure, and from my point of view, and to measure and to find a framework, or to create a framework, you know, to overcome this inertia. And I think that's the biggest challenge. That's the reason why I say open is a great word, to bring together these concepts. And at the end of the day, it's the challenge is to enable people to live it with a new mindset. I've seen so many Scrum meetings that ended up in a micromanagement in micromanagement meetings, or telling people what to do and what not to do, and that's exactly the point here. And that's we need to take care that managers are more focusing on change. So that's it from my point of view.
And that's what we devote ourselves to at Teal Unicorn. That's our thing. That's our secret sauce, is to change the management. That's absolutely what we're about. And the work side of it is just execution then. All the value stream mapping and the skills not roles and the the Kanban and stuff that we do with the workers is just execution. The key is all the work we do with the management, absolutely, to enable it to happen. And we've thought about various strategies and patterns that we would like to get more feedback on around influencing executives and unlocking them, that we'll cover, not now, but they don't all automatically jump on board, obviously. And so ways to get to executives and to influence executives is, we think, a key resource or a key strategy to start the whole thing and to unlock the whole thing. I completely agree. And until you get that, you can do stealth stuff. I've been involved in stealth projects, and what in the Agile Manager, we wrote about this, I talk about bubbles, creating a bubble inside the larger organization for a while to try and create proof points that you can then use to persuade senior management. So there are sort of ways to get at them. But that's the key. And that deserves a lot of attention, is how you get, and ultimately the governance, right? Because the people who set the culture and the tone of the organization for the executive are the ones who are ultimately in control of this, right? If the governance of the organization is still totally shareholder capitalism and we have to meet quarterly earnings, and then the CE is operating within that regime, then it's very hard to ultimately to get to survive for more than a year or two working in new ways until you can influence all the way up to the governance. So in the ideal situation, we do work with boards of directors as well as the executive in organizations, and there's several organizations where we have that level of not influence, but what's a softer word? We're in their ear, right? We're trying to influence. We have an opportunity to present our case, at least, even if I wouldn't say we were necessarily that influential. Sometimes we try to be. We need to change the thinking all the way up to the governance ultimately to get them to change their values. That's the real end game. And that comes back to when I say, this is a good place to wrap, actually, if you don't mind, because that comes back to what I say about better results, better lives, better society, because ultimately we are trying to influence all the way up to the governors and the values that they embrace and espouse. And so therefore that knocks on outside the organization itself and makes them makes the organization a better citizen. There's a whole bunch of ideas we draw on that come from the Open Leadership Network. So if anyone's not checked out the Open Leadership Network and their 8 patterns, it's Dan Mezek's IP. I highly recommend that. He's been very influential on us over the years. Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Come along on the journey. We'll have more conversations, and we'll see you soon.